have chapped lips, a big heart, a desperate need for a real-life Dallas Walker, and juicy currently written on the ass of my shorts. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my reading wrap-up for the month of January. I read 12 books this month. Kind of decided what I want to start with. A lot of the books this month, as you guys know, were rereads. It's winter. I've needed the coziness and comfort that some of my favorite books have to offer. So I'd say half of these were rereads. So I'm gonna be talking about books I've already talked about before. First up, let's go ahead and talk about Wait For It and Culty by Mariana Zapata, both of which were rereads. And the reason why we're starting off the video with these two is because I wasn't planning on rereading this one. This is the first book that I read this year. After I reread Wait For It, I was like, I think it might be my favorite Mariana Zapata book. Culty was previously my favorite, and after reading this I was just like, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. And then 2 days ago I couldn't find a book to read and I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna reread Culty and we're gonna see which one is my favorite Zapata book. Once and for all, we're gonna settle this. So drum roll please. My favorite Mariana Zapata book out of all of the ones that I've read is... It's Wait For It! It's literally Wait For It! Which is crazy! It's really not that crazy, but Wait For It was like my fourth favorite after I'd read it for the first time, and now I can't imagine my life without it. Not to be dramatic or anything, but this book means everything to me. It means everything to me. This one follows Diana and Dallas. They're both neighbors. Dallas is her grumpy neighbor, her hot grumpy neighbor who's married. He's not married when they get together, don't worry. If you haven't read it, don't worry. Diana has custody of her brother's 2 kids, so she's a single guardian to both of them. And her grumpy neighbor is just there and he thinks she's flirting with him. So he's like, I don't really want anything to do with you. And she's like, I'm not flirting with you. Have you ever heard of somebody being nice? And he's like, oh. All of Mariana Zapata books are slow burn. I'm going to talk about 3 of them today. Very slow burn, but worth the suffering. This one more so than others. However, I don't recommend reading this book first if you're new to MZ. I do recommend at least reading The Wall of Winnipeg and Me, which I'll talk about here in a second, before Wait For It, because Diana, who's the main character really in this book, we get to meet her in The Wall of Winnipeg and Me. 5 stars. You remember me mentioning Dallas Walker at the beginning of this video and how I need him? Yeah, Dallas motherfucking Walker is the MMC in this book. And he's her neighbor, and listen, I'm moving in like 3 days. I'm manifesting I will have a Dallas Walker as a neighbor. That's not gonna happen to me. I never get that lucky, but a girl can dream. Culty by Mariana Zapata. I think it's my second favorite. I need to reread the others. I don't know where my ranking system is all kinds of right now. This follows Sal and Culty, or Ray. He's her coach. There's a 13-year age gap. Culty was just so mean. So mean. I couldn't handle that level of mean. I would cry. I'm not that sensitive, but I am at the same time. The way he spoke to her at the beginning of this book, it's just mean. There was a few things during this reread I was like, what the f***? I didn't even notice that the first time. I was blinded. I was on a high. Either way, I'm choosing to ignore all flaws. 5 stars as well. I did post a reading vlog earlier this month over these 4 books, so if you want to know my full thoughts, go watch that video. I read Hellbent. I went back and forth between the audiobook and reading this book. Hellbent was 4.5 stars. Loved it. Better the second time around than the first time around because I was able to understand a little bit more with the fantasy stuff. Butcher and Blackbird is a 6 out of 5 star book for me, especially the audio. The best romance audiobook I have ever listened to. Ever. Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is the single dad, small town blueprint, okay? You just can't go wrong with Cade and Willa in this book. Age gap, single dad. I love this book. The Wall of Winnipeg and Me. Also a 5-star read. Aiden Graves is an asshole, but he can get it. And I love him. This one, slow burn. Sports romance, they work together. Marriage of convenience. This one is right there with Culty where Aiden Graves would make me cry. It would never work. He would make me sob uncontrollably, but I love him. Nectar of War. This is a high fantasy book and I believe it's getting traditionally published later this year. This was so good. So good, especially for it being the first book in what is to be like a very intricate high fantasy series, I was blown away with how much I liked it. A lot of people have asked me what high fantasy is every time I talk about this book on TikTok and Instagram. I'm not the best person to ask. I really am not, but from my understanding, it's like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings level fantasy. A lot of detail, a lot of different people's POVs. That's my understanding of it. The first 100 pages of it, you have to pay attention. I had to take notes, write little notes down so I didn't forget what character was what, because there's a lot of different types of characters and types of fantasy elements. It's very easy to get confused. 10 out of 10 recommend. Give it 4.5 stars. Just pay attention. While there is so many different people's POVs throughout this book, there is that romance. So there is an FMC and an MMC who are fated mates. So every time I got to their POVs, I was like, something happened. Please, 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 please. There is a virus kind of breaking out throughout the land, and it's causing people to turn against their own in a way. A deadly mutation has reached its peak within the realm of the wolves, forcing High Prince Laven and the leaders of his court to seek out other realms for a cure. High Prince Laven is hot. He's so hot. He's so hot. He's the one who we get to follow him and his mate throughout some of the book. And you're just like, love each other, please. He would give up anything for her. He would do anything for her. He would kill for her. And he has. Tastes like shocker. I ended up listening to the audiobook of this one on Spotify. This is one of those books where I think reading it would be a better experience than listening to it. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It was just a fun, okay read. You know how we say sometimes how some of the things we read in books and we find really hot, if a man in real life ever said that to us, we would be like, oh my God, stop. Full body cringe a little bit. Because I was listening to it, that was my experience almost. It was like I was hearing it and I was hearing some of the things the MMC was saying and I was like, no one speaks that way, don't say that. Don't say that, but I know for a fact if I would have read it, I would have been like, that is so hot. Bobby and Bunty, they have to work together a little bit to make their friend's wedding work. Bobby is the wedding planner and Bunty has to help her with the food side of things, but they hate each other. They're enemies because of what happens in the prologue of the book. There is also a mystery element to the book because someone is trying to sabotage the wedding. It was fun, but just all right. The night she disappeared, I ended up listening to this audiobook as well on Spotify, and I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I talked about this book as well as some of these other ones in my TBR video. Tallulah and her boyfriend go missing. And the book is bouncing back and forth to the time period before they went missing and then after they had gone missing. I will say what actually happened to both Tallulah and her boyfriend in going missing wasn't shocking to me in any way. The buildup was good to where it didn't give me anxiety, but I was also like, this could go in so many different directions. What is happening? And then when I found out what happened to them, it was good and it made sense. I wasn't like blown away by anything. The Witch Collector, I liked it, didn't love it. This is one of those fantasy books where I feel like it'll get better with each book that you read in the series. So I already bought the other 2 books in the series. I gave this like 3.25 stars. It was just okay. There was a little bit of insta-love between the MMC and the FMC. I'm not the biggest fan of insta-love, but I think there's gonna be a reason for that in the future. I just need to keep reading the series. It was fun. I did like how, I don't wanna give away any spoilers. Like I want you to be shocked. How can I explain this without spoiling anything? After a little bit of world building in the beginning of the book, it immediately jumps straight into the problem, I guess, in the issue at hand within the world, and I mean jump straight into it. So you're not waiting until the end for conflict to happen. There's conflict going on throughout the entirety of this book. I liked the witchy element of this book. It was less like boiling in cauldrons and casting spells witchy and more fantasy witchy, if that makes any sense, which I don't think it will, but just go with me here. The FMC is also mute, and so she communicates through sign, and the MMC knows sign. He knows sign. So when they met, she was trying to communicate and mouth her words and be like, I can't speak. And he started signing, and he was like, that's okay, I know sign. And she was like, what? And I was like, ah! Ah! Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Mark your mother calendars for February 6th. That's when this book comes out. I ended up reading the arc of it. This is one of my favorite books of the month. This is Allie's dabble into a fantasy world in a way. There's wolves, there's vampires, there's a lot of tension between the wolves, humans, and vampires. And it had a little bit of an Omegaverse feel and vibe to it. And I don't know if this was technically considered Omegaverse, but it kind of felt like that in a way. Incredible. Incredible. So fun, so giggly. I said this on Goodreads and on TikTok. But while reading this book, it made me feel like I was 14 again, and I had just stolen my dad's laptop at 1 a.m. in the morning to read werewolf fanfics on AO3. The giddiness that used to bring me, that's how I felt while reading this entire book. There's something about Ali Hazelwood's characters where they're all kind of unloved and unwanted, but the MMC and the FMC are like the first to just love and want the other. And it's just so good. And I used to not be an Ali Hazelwood stan, but I love her, I do. The last book that I read in the month of January was Off the Beaten Path. Someone recommended me this book in a YouTube comment, and I immediately went and read it because they said it was a single dad small town romance. This isn't necessarily fade to black, but there isn't any spice in it, which I appreciated. I didn't think it needed spice in it. It was just a very wholesome read, but there was also a lot of tension, which I loved. Holden and Ren are neighbors. Very much opposites attract. Holden, he's a single dad. He's very grumpy. And Ren has a very bubbly personality, I'd say. They clash so much and they bicker so much in the beginning. Ren sends her mail to his house so that he has to come speak to her and bring her packages over. And she's like, oh, hi, Holden. He's like, fuck off and stop sending your stuff to my house. She's like, but hi! Ren is renovating a cabin and her contractor ends up falling through for the cabin. So, oh no, guess who the only other contractor is in town? Take a wild fucking guess. It's Holden. So Holden has to come work on her little cabin with her and she ends up helping, and there's a little bit of forced proximity there. And the next thing you know, he's like, I can't live without you. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I liked it a lot. And those are all the books that I read in the month of January. And I will see you guys next week for a reading vlog. I have a lot of vlogs planned coming soon, so don't worry. We're not just doing sit down videos here. Love ya. Bye.